It is a sound design day today. We're gonna be using Serum, and we're gonna be making this chunky bass house bass sound. It sounds like this. You won't need any special wavetables or noise samples. There is a little bit of mapping. We use 5 LFOs, but the effects are straightforward. So work on the main face of Serum. Oscillator 1, you're gonna want a B sod square. And Oscillator 2, we want basic shapes for that one. Sub, we want the triangle. And noise, we want to leave it as AC hum 1. And yeah, so where do we begin? LFO 1, we're going to leave it as 1/4 of a bar. Click, hold, and drag this out and create this kind of ramp up shape. And from here, we'll map it to the wavetable of the first oscillator. Pull it back just a little bit and bring it up here. And we'll hop over to LFO 2, which is doing most of the work for this chunky sound. It's an unusual LFO shape, but it's quite unique. And it gives it that rhythmic quality to it. So I'm going to move this over here, double click down here. And the first half of it is going to be just a big old hill of sorts, followed by double click there. 2 little hills. Well, they're not really little hills, are they? And then a third one for the last C. So whum, 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 whum. And we'll change this from 1/4 to half. Wrong way, there we go. Cool, so we can do our mapping now for oscillator 1. Click, hold, drag this level all the way down. And then we'll click, hold, and drag, drop LFO 2 onto the level. You can start to hear it come through a little bit. We'll also do the same for the noise oscillator. Pull this back a bit. Also change this to direct out, so it's not going through the effects or the filter, which we're going to add in a second. Cool. And we'll change the level down on the sub, and we'll also click, hold, and drag. Drop that over there. And we're also going to need to apply it to a filter. 12.2 multi HP 12, which is a high pass and a peak filter at the same time. Drag this down, LFO 2, and pull it back to maybe 1 o'clock. And we'll also bump up the resonance while we're there. So you can hear that little bit of like a boosted peak frequency whenever it sweeps through. And to actually get it to sound like a bass instead of this weird ass sound. For Os B, we're going to bump this up an octave. Os A will drop it down 2. And the sub, we will drop it down 2 as well. You kind of start to get the sound coming through here, but Os B is annoying. And we're going to be using that for an FM source. So we're going to turn the level down and just leave it there. And speaking of FM source, that's where LFO 3 is going to kick into gear with this very weird LFO shape. So we're going to drop this down to half. And then create something like this. We want 3 hills this time. Oh, not quite. There we go, there we go, there we go. Something like that. And like I said, FM, Os A, we're going to go FM from B. Click, hold, drag it up. And then LFO 3, click, hold, drag over here. That's way too much FM. And we'll drop down an octave on keyboard, so we're not playing a high F, we're playing a lower F. And this FM is kind of personal preference. Find the sweet spot which you want your sound to sound like. Higher the FM, it's kind of screechy, lower it's kind of... And while we're on modulation, we'll go into Os B and change this to sync window half. And crank it up around 11 o'clock. Maybe like 10. And lastly, LFO 4. Did I say LFO? Did I say 5 LFOs at the start? I meant 4, sorry. This is going to be our pitch envelope, so we'll create the LFO shape here, and then we'll go into the matrix tool, kind of map it out there. So go ahead and switch this to half. So it's essentially how you want your pitch to sound. At the start of our sound, we kind of want like a ramp, and at the end of our sound, we also want another ramp, which is kind of taller. But we can fine tweak that once we're inside the matrix. We're inside the matrix. LFO 4 is going to be mapped to global master tune. I want the arrow to face to the right, and then we will drop this down. That's weird. It was sounding like this, but the arrows were going in both directions when it should have sounded like this when the arrow was pointing right. So this is where the pitchiness comes into it. But also this is giving off weird rhythmic sound because of the LFOs are starting at completely different times. So for all of them, we will change them from off or whatever they were on to trigger, 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 and trigger. So whenever I press a note, they'll always start at that point rather than somewhere random along the way, depending on where we are on the grid. So you can tweak this all you want as well, like get some crazy pitchiness at the start. I just want a little bit for that start. And I want it to kind of drop off towards the end. So use as much or as little as you want for this matrix mapping. Going to use a subtle amount for that. So that is essentially our sub, noise, oscillators, and filters done. We are going to do a couple more LFO mappings, but now it's onto the effects section where we make the sound extra chunky and larger than life. So yeah, or at least that's the plan anyway. Obviously, like any bass house bass I make, distortion's obviously on. It's going to be tube distortion and cranked quite a bit. Maybe not that much. Also going to be using a phaser just subtly. That sounds very weird. We'll drop the depth and we'll drop the frequency as well. Play around with the depth and frequency how you want your sound to sound. You can create some interesting results with that. LFO2 being used in the Serum preset. Once again, we will drop the mix of that. Click, hold, drag, and drop onto our mix there. Told you it was going to be super subtle, just a little bit in there. I mean, you could map the LFO to the frequency as well. Get a little bit more pronounced, you can hear it. I kind of like how that sounds actually. So we will drop our mix. Next up is, not yet, EQ. We're going to drag this above compressor because we'll use the compressor after. We're going to use both of the filters and the EQ. First one going to be a notch. Second one's going to be left like that. I forgot what it's called. Shelf. Hey, got there in the end. We just want a little bit of high-end sizzle. So we'll drag up the gain for that. Leave it. And we also want a notch around here. We're going to use LFO3 this time. Drag and drop that on the frequency. So it's modulating that, which sounds wacky. Sweep that across the frequency spectrum. Compressor, obviously we're going for that OTT. We'll leave it as is and crank up the gain. The sound is very, very close to being done. It just needs to be a little bit wider. So that's where hyper/dimension expander comes in. Drag this after the compressor. So I won't go through the sequence of effects. It'll be the final one just to kind of make it wider and round off the sound. Mix. Too much. Size, drag that down and drag the mix up. And that is essentially our sound. From here you can tweak it all you want. A few things I'd recommend is mucking around with this frequency band on this peak. And like I said before, the depth and the frequency on the phase. That sounds quite cool. Back into our oscillators. Muck around with the sync modulation for Os-B. Definitely have a play around with the FM on Os-A as well. Completely changes the sound. Maybe the resonance on the main filter as well. And another thing I'd also recommend is the octave on Os-B as well. I think leaving it as is sounds better than octave up. when you don't want the sizzle, it actually sounds kind of mint. Keen on that. And definitely one more thing which I almost forgot to mention is mucking around with LFO tool, which is our main rhythmic drive for this whole preset. You can completely change this. I mean, make it a little bit swingy with the bass house. I actually like that sound better than how the original I planned was gonna sound, so. Oh, that is fucking chunky! Oh, that is sick. And that, my friends, is how you make a chunky bass house bass inside of Serum. And yeah, catch you guys next time. Peace!